Hi there, thanks for joining me on Dragon's Teeth, and today we're taking our first look at World War II gaming. I think when I got into wargaming, World War II was my first era, my first passion. It's not really surprising because, as I mentioned before, I grew up in the age of airfix kits. The Second World War had finished less than 20 years before I was born, so it was still very much alive, both in the surroundings and of course in family, parents, grandparents and so on. It's quite interesting that everyone went through that amazing period of suffering and hardship, yet when I was a kid it was something we played at, almost encouraged in a way. So we had all those airfix kits, we had dinky toy Spitfires, we had action men, and quite often at Christmas for toys we'd get guns. It's quite an interesting thing to think about when you look back on it. But anyway, that prompted a big interest in me in military history, and World War II was my starting point. So when I came to actually start wargaming proper, it was very easy to switch over into using all those airfix soldiers and kits and models 1/72nd scale. So it went from making up your own things and fighting battles on the living room carpet to actually doing proper tabletop wargaming. And the first set of rules were the good old War Games Research Group, Armour and Infantry, 1925 to 1950. And I think in some way this is still how I judge wargaming rules for the Second World War. I like to have these tables of calibre of gun and the armour and the number you need to penetrate the armour and so on. And also then you get things like, have you immobilised the tank, is the turret jammed, that sort of thing. So quite detailed. And this suited things fine because we were doing games of maybe 4 or 5 tanks aside, a platoon or 2 of infantry, your typical sort of reconnaissance into a village or fighting for control of a bridge or a crossroads, that type of thing. So almost, I wouldn't say quite skirmish level, but somewhere just above skirmish level. And then of course we got into skirmish games as well. Sometimes we even used 54mm figures for those because of course you had those lovely airfix boxes of 54mm figures, the Afrika Korps, the 8th Army and so on and so on. So very cheaply you could get a squad together and you'd maybe have 2 or 3 players aside, each controlling a few figures and working some sort of squad level game. The rules that we used for that I've not been able to find at the moment. No doubt they're in one of my boxes in the shed, but they were, I think as most rules were back then, produced by a War Games group. They had a dark grey cover. They were just called something like World War II Skirmish Rules, I think, and basically it gave you a really nice game for that sort of squad level action. Now of course, as we do, we tend to start off small and then we like to make our battles bigger and bigger and bigger, all the way up to fighting a reenactment of Kursk or something. 25mm, that's difficult, but of course in the 70s, I'm not sure exactly when, we started seeing 1/300th armour, particularly from Heroics and Ross. I've mentioned New Model Army Wargame Shop in Manor Park a few times, and they used to sell Heroics Ross 1/300th. So that was great. Now we could build up these huge armies, and I think for the 25mm it tended to be Western Front, it tended to be Germans versus Brits or Americans, but with the 1/300th it was always Eastern Front. I guess just because of the scale of it, you can start recreating these things, you know, you can have your waves of T-34s thundering across the steppe. So that was something we got into and switched for quite a while to 1/300th. Coming back into gaming, I don't think I have any of my 1/72nd scale stuff left. Again, that might be in the depths of a box somewhere or in the mysterious sideboard in the shed. It could be that over the years it just got thrown away or left somewhere, I'm not really sure. So I set about buying some figures, and once again, because everything is plastic, it's quite cheap to build up squads and platoons. And The nice thing now is most figures are that hard plastic. One thing with the Airfix figures, they were that sort of soft, soapy plastic that was quite difficult to paint. Now, with these hard plastic figures, you can get a nice paint job on them. As well as that, of course, I bought some AFVs, a couple of Stoogs, a couple of Shermans. These are wargaming kits rather than model kits, so you don't get quite so much detail in terms of brass etched parts or anything like that, but they look great and they're very robust for wargaming purposes. When I got back into doing terrain, as I've spoken about on previous episodes, it was really specifically for that World War II setting. So lots of hedgerows, fields, roads, rivers, buildings, villages and so on. That was my primary aim, to be able to set up a good World War II tabletop. And of course I started looking around to see what new rules were available. I still do have the set of 1/300th rules we used. In fact, there were two sets. We used to use one that I think was published by Heroics and Ross themselves with a blue cover, and then the other set we started using was a set called Firefly, which were very good rules. Quite involved from what I remember, but a real excellent set of rules. But I thought, well, let's see what else is around, particularly in 25mm and also particularly for more skirmish level games. So there's our set of good old WRG rules from June 1973. They were published. I'm starting to feel old doing this. But a good solid set. And to be honest, from having a look around, I'd still probably turn to these rather than some of the other things. In particular, I've got a copy of Bolt Action that I know is very popular. And I read through these. Now, to be fair, I've not played them. The first thing you notice is, look, just compare this. Old rules, charts, typing, new rules, full colour pages, lots of photos, less charts. So yeah, as I say, I've not actually played through these, and perhaps I would feel different if I actually played them or someone took me through. But I didn't really take to these rules so much. Part of the reason was this idea of activation. Now, it could be that I've misunderstood it, but it seems that you might not be able to activate all your units or all your tanks in one turn. It seems to me with this kind of system, I feel like I don't really have a lot of control over what's going on. You know, and part of wargaming is it gives you control of this army or this unit or this platoon of tanks or whatever. So that was something I didn't take to. But I stand to be corrected. There is a big section on army lists here at the back, and the points value for this goes into quite a lot of detail. Flamethrower team, machine gun team, for each of the main armies. So yeah, that's quite an extensive and detailed section. But what I find flicking through is very little in actual charts or tables. There we go, a damage value table. And it seemed to me, and again, I could be wrong, that it didn't really matter what you were shooting with or shooting at. It's almost like you roll a dice and that tells you your damage, whether you're firing a 37mm gun or a 88. But that could be my misreading. An older set of rules I found, I think I got these on eBay. World War II Infantry Action, Rules for Mid-20th Century Section and Platoon Level Combat, published by Newbury Rules. And these date back to 1986, so these are quite old as well. And these are much more the traditional set. They're mostly infantry based. These are really for infantry games, though you do get AFVs and vehicles in here as well. But here, as we see, we're back to these nice charts and tables that take you through everything. So they look like a nice halfway point between your larger battles and your actual skirmish rules. But for full-on skirmish rules, I thought I'd try a copy of Nuts, Man-to-Man Combat, written by Ed Texiera, and these are more recent, I think. This is the 4th edition. I think these are, 2017. So these are a little more up to date. Now, I've only had a couple of reads through this, and this is quite involved from the looks of it. It's almost like RPG in the Second World War from what I see. In fact, I think you can take characters on from one game to the next. So characters have characteristics such as reputation, various attributes. So it does look to be quite a much more involved game. And in fact, there are some clips up on YouTube that take you through it. So I think I'm really going to have to work through those videos to see exactly how the game works. But by all accounts, this is a very good set of rules for doing your squad level skirmish actions. And being very interested in the Battle of the Bulge, which is a great campaign for skirmishes or larger actions, though I guess terrain might be a bit difficult for larger tabletop games. I couldn't resist getting this as well, for two reasons. One, it's the Battle of the Bulge, but also the title, Piper at the Gates. That's beautiful. Piper at the Gates of Dawn was a Pink Floyd album. The name is actually taken from a chapter in Wind of the Willows, so that sort of caught my eye. So there's quite a lot of supplements with this nuts as well for various like specific battles and specific settings. So in here, for example, we've got things about snowstorms, engines freezing, and as you can imagine for a Battle of the Bulge game, more details on blowing up bridges. Sticking with the Ardennes, I did also pick this up. This was actually on offer at a convention I went to a little while back. So this is for the Flames of War setup, and this is German forces on the Battle of the Bulge. And I don't know if it's so much a rule book, because obviously you're going to need the full rule book to play. But what I liked about this was really it gives you an excellent history of the units involved and the sort of setting for the Bulge, what was going on just before, what was going on the Eastern Front as well as in the West. So you've got a full history of the battles. Then you get, again, just look at the difference between old and new. These lovely photos of models, and it gives you details of the main German AFVs. And then it also takes you through the various types of infantry units as well. So armoured Panzer Grenadiers, Volksgrenadiers. Of course, in the Bulge you had that odd mix of sort of elite SS units and almost Volkssturm, really. Then you get onto the actual forces used in the battle. So very good. If you're building up armies, then this sort of thing for me is great because it tells you exactly what you need to build up. Like you want a Panzer Grenadier battalion, there it goes, all the information is there. This is particularly good for 1-300s, I think, because I'd actually have a chance of building these units up in 1-300s, both cost-wise and space-wise. And it gives you a specific breakdown of, say, Panther tank companies or platoons, Panzer IV Company, Panzer Grenadier Company. So very detailed in terms of putting your armies together. And then you get a little potted history of each of the units involved. So the 506 Heavy Tank Battalion, what they did in the Battle of the Bulge, what happened to them after. So a lot of good background history and information. And that's rounded out with the painting guide. Again, at this stage of the war, you've got the very colourful German camouflage patterns, whether that's for uniforms or for the tanks. It talks about the specific terrain for the Bulge, which of course played a major part in the battle, was a major influence on the tactics. And then we get a series of scenarios. Now, these are nice because they're linked scenarios, so you can play them individually or you can run them together as a sort of mini campaign. And from there we go into special rules. As we mentioned in Piper at the Gates, you've got rules for snow, you've got rules for bridge demolition, fuel dumps, booby traps, and so on. So I don't know what the Flames of War rules are actually like, but going by this, I thought this was a very impressive product, and I might look at getting a set of the rules just to see how the game actually works. And I didn't totally forget 1/300th, because again I thought it's nice to see what rules are around there. This is from Old Dominion Gameworks, Mein Panzer by Jonathan W. Coulter, and these were published in 1998, so again a fairly old set of rules. And these look interesting because again this looked to me much more like old school wargaming. So there's our nice play chart, reference card. Again, lots of nice tables. Talks about how to set the game up, how to set your terrain up, observation, line of sight, and these rules work nicely because they introduce things in modules. So it's possible just to play an infantry game, just to learn the outline of the game. So there's your infantry module, and then you can add in your armour, you can add in your artillery, you can add in, there's the air support module. So you can gradually add all these things in to increase both the realism and complexity of the game. Even an engineering module, because there's some great scenarios you can set around engineering, particularly World War II Eastern Front. There were a lot of actions where they were trying to repair bridges or build a bridge and the Russians are coming, or vice versa. So again, that's a nice addition. There's even a module for armoured trains. Not something you saw on the Western Front so much, but certainly on the Eastern Front they were a feature. So quite detailed rules from the looks of it. Again, I've not played through these yet, but they certainly look like my sort of thing. So there we go. In terms of specific projects, I don't have too much lined up at the moment for World War II. I did order some 1/300th figures. I think it was from Heroics and Ross, who are still going, I'm pleased to say. So what I will do is unpacking of those sometime and maybe look at painting those up. Aside from that, at some point I will be working into those nuts skirmish rules because they look really nice, and I think we'll be able to get some good scenarios and maybe even a mini campaign or two running out of that. So keep an eye out for those in the future. As always, any comments, suggestions or questions, please let me know. Please like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.